All right, well, welcome to the Study Away at the Middlebury Institute information session. I am glad to have some enthusiastic people here to share this information with all of you. And advance my slides. So what we'll do this evening is we'll go through introductions, and then we'll talk about your different academic options if you choose to spend a semester or year out at the Institute. Housing, cost and money matters, the application process, and next steps. And I'm Susan Parsons. I work in the International Programs Office, and so I work with some of our schools abroad, and I also work with Study Away out at the Institute. Jake.
Yes.
You want to introduce yourself? Sorry. And just,
Sorry.
When you were there and what program you were in.
Absolutely. Yes, I was there fall of 2019. So I guess it would have been the last full semester before COVID. And I was taking the Non-Proliferation and Terrorism Studies program.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I was there actually last semester, so spring of 2021, which obviously looked a little different than Jake's experience. It was still fully remote, but I was there last semester, and I was also in the Non-Proliferation Terrorism Studies school.
Josh, do you have a sense of what you're interested in doing out at the Institute, or you don't have to have decided yet?
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm just trying to get as much information as possible right now, just so I have a better idea when I do make my decision.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, Jake and Taylor, and also Josh. So Jake and Taylor, let me know if, as I'm going through some of these points, feel free to interrupt me with your own thoughts and impressions. I'll also just ask you to discuss your experience when we get to certain topics. And Josh, feel free to interrupt any of us if you have any questions as we go through this. So the Middlebury Institute of International Studies out at Monterey was initially founded in 1955 as the Monterey Institute of Foreign Studies. It's our graduate school that promotes international understanding through the study of language and culture. There are over 750 students typically in a given year who come from 53 countries. And so it's a very international student body. And there are 13 master's degrees that students can choose from. And there are two different graduate schools within the Institute, International Policy and Management, and then Translation, Interpretation, and Language Education. There are lots of acronyms, which you'll just have to get used to. So for our students who are interested in going out and spending a semester or a year at the Institute, there are many different programs in which you can enroll. There are master's programs in international education management, environmental policy, policy and development, public administration, trade and economic diplomacy, linguistics and language teaching. And then we have two programs that are starting up within the next 1 or 2 semesters: the Middlebury, California Climate Semester, which is starting up this spring, and then the Middlebury Global Security Semester. That is actually what we are now naming the Study Away through the NPTS program, trying to give it kind of a catchy name and attract students that way. So one of your options is, as I mentioned, just to study away in, like, you sort of enroll within one of the existing master's degree programs, and you take courses at the graduate level alongside students. And then there are these two sort of highlighted programs. The California Climate Semester is going to take place every J-term and spring semester. There's going to be a J-term course on California's cultural and natural history, as well as climate issues that are relevant to California. And then you continue on through the spring semester and take a core course, which dives into those topics about California specifically a little more in depth. There's an experiential learning course, and then you take your remaining courses in the IEP program that exists out at the Institute. But the Institute is a great place to study the climate. There are a lot of experts on climate issues there, and there's also the Center for the Blue Economy, which is an organization that works towards ocean-based sustainability solutions. Now, what Jake and Taylor studied in is the Non-Proliferation and Terrorism Studies master's program out at the Institute, which we are now calling the Global Security Semester. You can study there either the fall or the spring term. Its focus is on non-proliferation, terrorism studies, financial crime, cybersecurity. You take the majority of your coursework in the NPTS program within the existing courses there. You do have the option to take content-based language classes if you are studying a language here at Middlebury. And then there are also possible research assistant positions through CNS, which is a Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, and CTEC. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about your academic experience and perhaps why you chose to study away in the NPTS program to begin with?
Jake, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can start, and Taylor, feel free to cut me off if I start rambling. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I actually think that I like the sort of rename / rebrand that you guys did. I think ultimately it reflects the nature of the program a little bit more accurately, because even though a lot of things are sort of looked at through the lens of terrorism or nuclear weapons, WMDs, it really is a broader program than that. And a lot of the sort of academic work really touched on different sort of intersectional areas of global security. And especially when you consider the financial crime aspect and the cybersecurity aspect, that doesn't necessarily fit in with the sort of two traditional ideas of terrorism and non-proliferation. So the global security, I think, is just a more accurate way of summarizing the breadth of what is covered. In terms of coursework and just working as a research assistant at CNS, I can get into quickly. But you really do get an opportunity to take courses ranging from being relatively introductory up to a more advanced level, and even going in without necessarily a ton of prior experience. You'd be able to, I think, pretty quickly, depending on taking the right sort of course balance, actually immerse yourself and gain at least some sort of basic functional level of expertise within a few specific areas, which I think is really cool. And then if you were to go down this route, highly recommend looking into getting either a research position with CNS or a research position with CTEC, because in both cases there are paid positions. So just sort of having a part-time job throughout the semester, and you're doing work that can actually end up contributing to stories that might be on the front page of CNN or The Economist. Recently, CNS was featured on the front page of The Economist as just highlighting the open source work that they do with regards to nuclear weapons proliferation primarily. But while I was there, I was able to do really cool projects with looking at Iranian missiles. That included giving a presentation to members of the armed forces that were actually there, doing a conference with MIIS students, and then also looking at trade issues. Actually, after the semester, I continued working with CNS. So in terms of setting you up for a relatively niche area, but one that's incredibly important, it probably is the best type of program you could do. I don't think you would get that same level of specificity doing a standard political science or IR program at another school that Middlebury does study abroad with. That's not to say that those programs don't have their benefits, but in terms of the specificity and the specific issue area focus, it's a really, really incredible program.
I mean, snaps, yes, ditto to all of that. I think something that I mean, like Josh, I don't know what your major is, and I don't know anybody watching this recording. But just speaking to being an undergraduate, taking graduate level courses, given the nature of remote learning, I've actually gotten to take courses through MIIS before, which was incredible and kind of part of why I pushed so hard and really wanted to study away, because I think getting to take classes as an undergraduate at a graduate level has been hugely helpful to me in kind of developing as a student and also as what I want to do when I'm no longer an undergraduate. So even just looking at the professional development opportunities that this study away program offers, no matter what school you end up taking it in, it's kind of breathtaking. The people that I'm now connected with through these professors that are like the top in their field. And the fact that we have the opportunity as like 20-year-olds to interact with them and to have these sessions with like real experts who are on CNN and doing work that like actually contributes was just incredible. I think in terms of like from an academic standpoint, Jake and I talked a little bit about the classes that we took. But I think the best thing that I did was I looked at the staff bios of all the professors, and I chose to take classes with them that were in the area of expertise that they mentioned in their staff bios, because I felt as though that was going to mean they were more engaged in the material. And it just meant that it related to like the current research that they were doing. So we talked a little bit, Jeffrey Lewis is like very well known in the nonproliferation field as like the expert on open source tools. And so I got to take a class with him, and we actually helped him like work on the project that he was currently working on. We would like stay after class and do this research with him. And it's a very cool way to kind of nerd out about things that you really, really care about. And I don't know if I'm setting you up, Susan, very, very well, but to have the semester count not just as an undergraduate semester, but also as graduate credits is not a small advantage. And it's definitely something to think about if you're concerned about like paying for grad school, or if grad school is something you're interested in. Like that's a huge and very unique opportunity that we have as Middlebury students.
Yeah. I will touch on that in just a minute, but yes, Taylor, 100% correct about that. Josh, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it a little more. I probably would lean towards doing the climate one more.
Yep.
So I know both you guys did this part, the global security semester, but did you get to, interact with any of the students doing the climate one? And, do you have anything to say about that one? Just because, if I was going to pick one of the two, I'd probably do the other one.
So climate semester is launching this spring. So it hasn't started yet, but you guys can certainly address, there are semesters where we have students who are out at the Institute who are in different programs. So I don't know how you interacted with those students and can maybe talk about that.
Okay.
This is where I'll beg off saying I was online. So it was very, very different. And I can't speak to what it's going to look like in the future.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I think that there is a pretty decent degree of interaction with people in other degree programs. I think a lot of the people that I became close with while I was there were in the MPTS program, just because I was taking more classes with them and generally had overlapping interests. But that's not to say that you're sort of boxed into a particular program. You do get to meet students at other or within the other schools at MIIS, and the school itself does a good job of organizing sort of internal clubs, internal social events, so you can get to meet people. And then also kind of by virtue of you being in a mid-sized city in California, there are sort of plenty of opportunities outside of school to interact with other students and with people at other schools, or not even at any school in a particular area. So you're not boxed in any way to a specific program in terms of the people that you interact with.
Does that sort of answer your question, Josh?
Yeah, I know it's hard because you just said it hadn't launched yet, but yeah.
Yeah. Are you thinking about going this coming spring or in 23?
23.
Okay. So what's nice is we've got a handful of students who are going to be doing the climate semester program this coming spring. And so I can always put you in touch with them next summer once their spring term has wrapped up, and you can pick their brain and chat with them about their experience. But I think what's a little different about that program versus a program like the global security semester is you're out there for J-term, you're taking the course. This coming year, it's with Professor Dan Brayton from Middlebury. And so I
had him last year.
Oh, okay. So he's going to be leading that course. And he's going to also be teaching a course during the semester out there. And so it's a little bit more, there are some fixed courses that you'll be taking that are just for the climate semester students. And then your other courses will be alongside MIIS graduate students. So it's almost a hybrid in a way of some program courses with undergrads and then some courses within the International Environmental Policy program at the Institute. All right, I'll touch on a couple other things, but then I do have some questions that I might have Jake and Taylor answer. So as far as credit and course enrollment, so the climate semester is a little bit different because half your classes are kind of prescribed and then half can be IEP electives. It's a little bit different, but if you enroll in another study away opportunity, you don't necessarily have to enroll just in courses taught in that subject, or not taught in that subject, but taught in that master's program. You can dabble in some other subjects, but you are expected to enroll in a full load of courses. The credit system at MIIS is different from that at Middlebury. So you need to be enrolling in at least 12 MIIS credits in order to earn full credit back at Middlebury. As for housing, this is new. So Taylor, you obviously were not out there. Jake, you were out there, and I'm not sure what you did for housing, but we now have a dorm. There's a newly renovated dorm out in Monterey that is walking distance to campus, as well as grocery stores and restaurants. It's the Moonrust dorm, and it can house 87 students, and there are singles, doubles, and triples, shared kitchen spaces and study spaces. The nice thing about that is there didn't used to be a dorm option, and so students had to either, search Craigslist or sublet from a grad student who was going to be away for the upcoming semester. And I think, I don't know, Jake, you can speak to this, but it probably was a little bit stressful just because you're used to coming from like a residential campus where everything's taken care of. You don't have to live in this dorm that's available now. If you want to find your own housing, you certainly can. But there's something convenient to the fact that we do now have this dorm. So Jake, I don't know if you have anything to add from your own housing experience.
Sorry about that. I think that my housing experience is partly difficult because there are very few people that offer a lease under 1 year, combined with the fact that everyone has heard about the California housing market not exactly being full of availability and affordability. But I was able to figure out something after a little period of stress, and ended up letting out another room from someone who was completing a year lease. So it was a really nice house relative to the cost, not too far from campus. You could walk down by the water to get to campus in the morning, and ultimately end up working out well. I would recommend, though, I think if you are going to go for one semester, I think the dorm option would be incredibly useful. It just removes a layer of stress before you go out there, and also will probably give you a good sort of social community right off the bat. And I think those are two strong benefits. If I end up going back to grad school at MIIS, which is certainly a possibility, I would probably just rent a house and have some more of a traditional grad school living arrangement. But for a study away semester, I think having the dorm is going to be incredibly useful.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jake. So as far as the calendar goes, it kind of depends on when you're going, but the fall semester is late August to mid-December, so very similar to the Middlebury fall calendar. They just start a little bit earlier than Middlebury tends to here in Vermont. The spring semester, this is where it depends on what you're out there studying, but the climate semester, as I mentioned, starts in J term. And goes for both J term and spring semester. But for most other students, the spring semester out at MIIS starts late January. Because there is an overlap with the J term here on campus, you can't be enrolled in a J term here on campus, but you earn what we call a winter term equivalency credit, so that you are kind of earning this magical credit for that J term that you're not able to enroll in anything here on campus. So you're not going to be behind on credit when you come back to Vermont. And so for financial information, spending a semester at MIIS is less expensive than spending a semester at Middlebury. For this current year, the tuition amounts are marked. If you were to choose to live in the dorm, you'd be billed for that dorm cost, and it varies this current year. We're planning to move to just a program fee starting for the 22-23 year that would just bill students for tuition and a housing charge. And so once we have those details ironed out, we'll be posting that information. But the nice thing is that if you receive financial aid here at Middlebury, your aid travels to a semester out at the Institute. And so Student Financial Services takes a look at what you're billed for, which is tuition, and then the dorm, as well as all of the out-of-pocket expenses like your meals, your local transportation, all of those expenses during your time out there, and we'll factor those costs into your total aid award for the time that you're out there. And then just to talk about the admissions requirements, so you do need to have declared your major by the time you complete the application. You should have a B or a 3.0 average in your major or majors, B- overall. And we do want to see students who've had some relevant coursework in the subjects that they're going to go out and study, since it is graduate level. And we're asking that students have junior or senior standing, though we will take sophomores who have shown some previous academic experience and motivation to go in as sophomores to study at the Institute. And so the application is all online. You can find a link for it at Go California. The study away application deadline for next year is February 1st, and that's for either fall or spring next year. I will say, as of today, you can't find the application online. It'll be live next week. But so you can go online starting next week and start an application. I do encourage you to meet with your major advisor before you complete the application. There's not much to it. There's the application form itself, where you include a short personal statement about why you want to go there. Aside from the climate semester, which again is sort of a prescribed curriculum, we do ask you to just sort of send us a list of courses you'd like to take. It'll show us that you've done some research into the courses that are available there. Your major advisor should complete an approval form, and then we'll ask you to upload your unofficial transcript from Bannerweb. Once you've gone through that and have your application completed, you'll receive an admissions decision from Middlebury. And then you'll be provided with instructions to complete a very abbreviated application that MIIS has in place. And it'll take you like 5 to 10 minutes to complete that, but it's just so that you get into the MIIS enrollment system, so that they can then start sending you some pre-arrival information.
So is the application, it says February 1st is the deadline, that's for spring 2023?
It is right now, yes, but we will certainly take late applicants. Yeah, but technically, it's so that the enrollment committee here on campus has a sense of who's going to be away from campus in the fall and the spring all at one time, so they can look and see if there's going to be housing issues like there were this fall. So yeah, February 1st technically is the deadline, but we'll accept late applicants for sure.
Okay.
And so Taylor talked about this a little bit, the accelerated entry into a master's degree. And so what's really nice about spending a semester a semester studying away is that while you're earning those credits that can be transferred back as, undergraduate credits towards your Middlebury graduation, they can also count towards one of the semesters of your MA degree path if you would decide to obtain your master's out at MIIS after graduating from Middlebury. So that's a huge incentive. There's information on our website about the accelerated degree. It's great that it can shorten your time to your master's. Another way to make the Institute a bit more affordable is that they offer scholarships to students just for being a Middlebury alum. And then if you've also done other special programs of Middlebury's, like the School of the Environment or Mid-Corps, if you studied abroad or through a schools abroad or attended the summer language schools, those are all programs that can give you scholarships, and that all adds up as discount basically towards your MIIS degree. So it's kind of neat that you could obtain your degree in a shorter amount of time than other students would. So I just wanted to ask Jake and Taylor, do you guys want to talk a little bit about taking classes alongside graduate students and what that was like as an undergrad? Because I feel like I get that question a lot when students come to talk to me about study away. So I just was wondering if you guys could talk about that experience and, you know, whether it was intimidating or not at all, and just kind of that experience with grad students in the classroom.
Yeah, I can't overstate how not intimidating it was. I like have never felt that comfortable just like speaking in class. And part of that is MIIS does a really good job, as even as a study away student, they'll run you through an orientation. So you meet with all the other students who are like incoming freshmen, although obviously they don't use that term. And so you come into your classes, especially if you're taking even like one intro level class, which I would like recommend, in which like your advisor will recommend for you as well. So you kind of go in knowing these other people, and sometimes they're 22-year-olds, and so it's not that different from taking a higher level class here at Middlebury, like here at the college, because they're 22 instead of 21 or whatever it is. And sometimes they're people who have had full careers and have come back, but you kind of start on this like very even playing field. And I found it just hugely illuminating to have people in class. Like we were talking about military policy, and there were people in my class who had gone and been on active duty in Afghanistan. That's a huge and very, very interesting perspective to have. But I never felt like my opinion or my ideas were devalued because I was an undergrad. On the contrary, I think a lot of people were actually very intimidated. I got a lot of comments of like, oh, but you're a student, like you know how to do this. Like I haven't done a project in so long. And so like the welcoming atmosphere on that side, and then also kind of the benefit of it being older students who maybe have a little bit of experience that you're not going to hear about in an undergraduate classroom. I like can't overstate what an advantage I felt like that was. So like any student that's thinking about studying away, I would not be concerned about it being like an intimidating experience at all. I don't know if Jake had a different experience, so that was my 2 cents.
Taylor, I think you hit it right on the head, because everything that you said, I probably would have said exactly the same thing. If anything, I think it's even if there is a slight intimidation factor or whatever, it's outweighed by the benefits of being with people with different life experiences. Like I was saying, a lot of people are just fresh out of undergraduate anyway, or maybe a couple years out, so that doesn't make too much of a difference. But I remember in one of my classes, MIIS has an association with the Naval or the Army War College, so there's always a visiting Army War Fellow. And in this case, it was a 42-year-old colonel. And at first, I first couple days really intimidated, ended up getting to know him relatively well, learned a lot from him, get drinks with him, talk about like, you just learn a lot from people that have a lot of subject matter expertise. And I think oftentimes that they're generally impressed by the sort of quality of Middlebury students for being people that, relatively speaking, don't have comparable life experiences. And I think I probably learned maybe not as much, but almost as much from the students in an academic setting, in a research assistant setting, as I did from the professors. And in many cases, professors are actually learning from the students. When like working with Jeffrey Lewis as well, like Taylor was saying, this one professor, he was learning about how to do video analysis from a student that used to be a videographer in a previous life. So and that's sort of specific to the global security program, but it does sort of is an interesting relationship between students, each other, the professors, and it's unique, and I think it's pretty healthy.
I had a question real quick. So, I mean, it's sort of related to what you guys talked about. But so I don't know if either of you guys also studied abroad somewhere else, but do you feel like if you didn't, do you feel like you kind of missed out on an opportunity there? Like, oh yeah, I got to go to California, which was awesome, but it would have been really cool if I got to go to Europe or go to New Zealand or something like that. And do you feel like you wish you could have done that?
I can speak to that a tiny bit. So I'm an IGS major at the college, so it is actually a requirement that we study abroad. And I was planning on being abroad in Spain in the fall and then going to Monterey in the spring. I was very, very excited about it and kind of beside myself when it got canceled. I think looking back on it now, the whole point to me of a study abroad semester is to go somewhere different, to be exposed to different experiences and to do something that's a little bit like outside of your comfort zone. And I feel like I got those experiences from MIIS. And so like, if what you want is to go and be in Europe and like party with your friends and travel, like, yeah, that's not what you're going to graduate school for. But if what you're going for is like academic experience that's really going to challenge you, and also this like opportunity for personal growth that's maybe in a setting that you're not entirely used to, I think MIIS is a very good option and kind of an alternative. I know we call it study away, but it really did kind of feel like a study abroad program to me, at least.
I would largely echo the same thing. So I never did do a traditional abroad program, although I was a Feb, and in my Feb master, I was abroad for a period of time. But no, I was deciding between going to Edinburgh or going to MIIS. And I don't want to say it was a coin flip, because it wasn't a coin flip, but it was basically like coming down to the end, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was sort of between maybe a semester in Edinburgh would be more fun or more kind of academically fulfilling in a different way, sort of a newer classroom experience. But then again, I'm thinking that MIIS would be something that could be useful professional development or help me sort of hone in on my interests a little bit more. And I first, when I was going there, I was worried that I was going to have regrets or second guess the choice, and that didn't end up happening. I was really happy with having decided MIIS. I think that what Taylor's saying is right. If your goal is to sort of Euro trip a little bit, MIIS is not that. You will not be in a beer hall in Munich at Oktoberfest. But I think that if you are, like in your case, interested in environmental programs and you really want a academic experience that can really focus you in more than just a sort of generalist liberal arts program, I think it's really hard to beat what's on offer at MIIS. And I also don't mean to say that MIIS is not fun. It's different from doing something like going to Prague or Budapest, but you are in a incredibly beautiful area. Big Sur is close, amazing hiking. You're on the ocean. It's absolutely gorgeous. I would always walk the long way to school every day just because it was truly stunning scenery. The town itself is quite cool. Interesting nightlife, fun people to hang out with. Shivo's on Thursday, $3 drinks. You're 21. It's great. So it's different from studying abroad, but you don't miss out on as much as you might think, and as much as I feared. And I think that the flip side is highly beneficial. Also, my computer might die right now, so if I disappear, that is why.
Thanks for the heads up, Jake. And if I do lose you, thank you so much for talking with us. Josh, I'll also just say that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. I mean, as Taylor said, she was going to spend the fall in Spain and then the spring at MIIS, and then the world caught fire. But we've had students who have spent a semester at the Institute and a semester studying abroad. We even had a student who spent a semester at the Institute, studied abroad, went and spent another semester at the Institute, just to go back after her experience in another country. And I think sometimes, I think that experience of studying abroad and studying at MIIS, I think those two could complement each other really well. I think especially if you spent a semester abroad first, had that experience, especially if you're interested in the environment and climate, go and study that in another place, and then bring all of that experience with you to your studies in the climate semester program out at MIIS. I think you'd find it to be a very enriching experience to have done both. That does mean spending 2 semesters away from Middlebury. So you would just, need to make sure that you take whatever classes you need to take here before you would spend 2 semesters away and then come back for your senior year. But it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. So just something to think about.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I actually have to run real quick, but I have one more question. I guess, Jake, you kind of talked about how, it's a really pretty place and there's hikes and there's the ocean, but I was just kind of wondering, how's the weather there? Like, I know what I'm getting in Vermont, but how's the weather at?
Better than Vermont.
So I like my New England autumns. So if I had more of a choice, I didn't really have a choice of what semester I ended up doing it. It kind of had to be fall. If I had a choice, I would have done spring because I like autumn a lot in Middlebury, and I'm not a crazy fan of mud season. But the weather is really nice. The ocean's obviously, it's not warm, it's a cold ocean, but I think generally it stayed between 50 and 70 between September and November. December got a little bit colder, it was a little bit warmer in August, but I rarely rained. Every morning you were socked in fog until 9:30, and then the fog would lift and then it would be sunny. Obviously not quite like clockwork, but not far off. So the weather is quite nice. And if you are into hiking or surfing or mountain biking or road biking or whatnot, it's a good, if you kind of plan ahead and like do some exploring, it's fantastic.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Josh, thanks for joining us.
This was super helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad. Feel free to email me if any questions come up. And yeah, if you can get in an application by February 1st, that's great. Yeah, and if you want to reach out next summer and ask to be put in touch with some of the climate semester returnees once our first semester wraps up, I'm happy to do that too.
Actually, I guess I have one more quick question. So if I do apply, since it is kind of far in advance, let's say I apply and I get it, do I now have to go, or can
Nope.
I then decide after?
You can decide after. Yeah, being accepted does not bind you to it.
Okay.
You'll be asked to commit before the college's re-enrollment deadline, the semester before you'd be going. So if you're looking to go next spring, we'd want to know, a year from now if you're actually going to go. There are implications as far as the dorm space. We can guarantee a spot in the dorm through October 15th. And after that, it's not a given that you could get a spot there. But so, and the college's re-enrollment deadline is November 15th. So we would definitely need to know by then what your plan for spring 23. But
yeah,
so
it's just nice that
there's
there
nothing
is some
binding.
buffer. There's a
for sure.
Buffer, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for talking to me about this. This was super informative, and it's definitely good to know more about the options that I could choose from.
Yeah, you're welcome, Josh. Thanks for coming. And yeah, tell your friends. This recording will be up tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.